Hi, good morning or good afternoon because I'm in the British Standard Time now. Welcome to the show. This is Joycelyn Linton coming into the Higher Calling, and I'm talking from two platforms here. I've got blogtalkradio.com/coming into the Higher Calling, and I'm also on www.speaker, that's speaker.com/Joycelyn Linton's Tracks, and Tracks ends with apostrophe S. So today is the fourth day, it's the 10th day of the fourth month, April, the year 2017. The time now is 12:18 British Standard Time, and I'm about to give a live and dynamic prophecy. And I always give the date and the time because they are significant to what's going on in the heavens and in the universe. And the moments, they unfold. So I may give the same type of scriptural reading in another hour's time and get a different prophetic message. So this is the prophetic message that's coming through in the nowness of the now. Can I put it that way? So I tend to play with the numbers, and there's the 10 and the 4, the 207, and it had the 1218, which has just flicked over to 19. So I'm going to say I'm talking in algorithms right now, and as I started the 4 and the 10, 2017, 12, 18, true false. I'm going to say that I'm getting the true false. But why I'm saying true false in this instance is that I'm speaking a truth, but in the minds of the people, no, put it this way, I'm speaking a truth about a false situation, but it's the truth, if you can take a hold of what I'm saying here. So welcome to the show. This is Joycelyn Linton coming into the Higher Calling, and I'm going to take up from the readings I did last week on Hannah. Taken from the first book of Samuel, from the very first chapter. And I called it the true love of a mother, and then I added on from the prayers of a prophet's mother. That's taken from Hannah, who then went on to have Samuel, who's a renowned prophet. And I said the prayers of a prophet's mother because it also reminds me of Rebecca, who prayed, and she got Esau and Jacob, and we hear that Esau the Lord hates, but Jacob he loves, because Jacob is in plentiful, you see, and Jacob is in the mind of God. So that's why. So Rebecca, though she petitioned her husband to pray to the Lord on her behalf, you see, but it took prayers that they brought forth the prophet. And even Sarah with Abraham, it took prayers that Isaac came through, you see. And so there's something significant about the prayers. And can I tell you, folks, that last week I studied Hannah and I did a few podcasts. And I found myself praying differently yesterday in the church. I was in the Anglican church and it was the end of the service. It was quiet. And I went onto my knees, clasped my hand, and I began to pray with real focus. And those who were remaining in the church building, I shut them out. Usually I get a little bit embarrassed being there on my own and kind of kneeling down and sort of praying away, and I'm conscious of the people around me. But on this occasion, I found that I was still, and I went into a stillness of mind and stillness of focusing. I no longer heard the people around, and there was a quiet silence in me. And in that quiet silence in me, it was like another voice began to speak. Another voice came through, you see. And I could have stayed with that moment. I could have stayed with it as long as it took me to stay with it. But I began to become mindful of time, because I knew that any time someone is going to trot over to me and tell me that the building has to be closed, you see. Or even if they don't say that to me, the vicar will come and she'll say, I'll leave the key here for you. So there'll be some form of disturbance. And plus, I knew that there was another church that likes to do their service in the afternoon. So some form of trotting over would have come to me in the intercessory. Plus, I needed to do my own podcasting as well. So I really could not have surrendered to that moment as I would like to, but it touched me. I've been wanting this for a long time. I wanted to pray like this for a long time, and the moment came. I went into deep silence. My whole body was in silence. I knelt on my knees. I clasped my hands as I just said to you. I closed my eyelids, and I just began to pray. But it wasn't this top voice that you're hearing, just speaking under this breath. Oh, merciful Lord, thank you for bringing me here to the church. Thank you for all that's happening in my life. Thank you. It wasn't that type of voice. There was just a moment of silence, as I just said to you. And another voice came through. And I found myself listening to the voice. I found myself listening to that inner voice and what that inner voice was saying. But then the outer voice had to say, be mindful of the time, be mindful of the time, you see. And I had to kind of switch myself out of the trance. So I was in a trance. And another voice began to speak. And I was amazed, and I began to realize this is because I was studying Hannah in the book of Samuel. And you know what else marveled me about that little opportune moment was that there was a spiritual shift that took place on the studies last week. There was a spiritual shift. So something took place last week as I began to study the book of Samuel and talking about Hannah and her prayers. And I would say that was a word in due season. It was in the alignment of the will of God that we should be studying these prayers and the format of the prayers and Hannah. And there was a shift that took place. And the amazing thing, if you heard me, was that this chitter-chatter voice went silent. And another voice came through. Another voice came through. So I can start to appreciate, and I'm going to spend a little more time, or as long as it takes actually, on Hannah. You see, I'm going to let Hannah's prayer be the center point of all the other studies, because we're still looking at the prophet Zechariah, and we're still on the Gospel of John, particularly on Jesus arising Lazarus from the death. And I've been sprouting out from those reading as well. So this morning, or this afternoon, because we've gone over to midday, I want to look at Samuel, the book of Samuel 1, and chapter 1, and look at verse 15. You see, and in the other podcast, I've given a summary, and I don't want to go too much in the summary, but those who are just joining me, basically the book of Samuel, it starts off about now there was a certain man of Ramathim Mazophim of Mount Ephraim, and Ephraim is an important place. That's where Jesus came from. It's also where Jacob, when he went to bless the two sons of Joseph, he crossed his hands and he gave the youngest the blessing over the eldest. You see, so and his name was Elkanah, the son of Zeram, the son of Elihu, the son of Tehu, the son of Zaphor, and Ephraite. And he had two wives. The name of the one was Hannah, and the name of the other Peninnah. And Peninnah had children, but Hannah had no children. And this man went up out of the city yearly to worship and to sacrifice unto the Lord of hosts in Shiloh. And the two sons of Eli, Hophni and Phinehas, the priest of the Lord, were there. All right. So it just says here, and the time was that Elkanah offered. he gave to Peninnah his wife, and to all her sons and her daughters portions. But unto Hannah he gave a worthy portion, for he loved Hannah, but the Lord had shut up her womb. And her adversary also provoked her sore, for to make her fret, because the Lord had shut up her womb. And as she did so year by year, when she went up to the house of the Lord, so she provoked her. Therefore she wept and did not eat. Okay. Then said Elkanah her husband to her, Hannah, why weepest thou? And why eatest thou not? And why is thy heart grieved? Am not I better to thee than 10 sons? So Hannah rose up after they had eaten in Shiloh, and after they had drank. Now Eli the priest sat upon a seat by a post of the temple of the Lord, and she was in bitterness of soul, and prayed unto the Lord, and wept sore. And she vowed a vow, and said, O Lord of hosts, if thou wilt indeed look on the affliction of thine handmaid, and remember me, and not forget thine handmaid, but will give unto me, unto thine handmaid, a man-child, then I will give him unto the Lord all the days of his life, and there shall no razor come upon his head. And it came to pass, as she continued praying before the Lord, that Eli marked her mouth. Now Hannah, she spake in her heart, only her lips moved, but her voice was not heard. Therefore Eli thought she had been drunken. And Eli said unto her, How long wilt thou be drunken? Put away thine wine from thee. And Hannah answered and said, No, my lord, I am a woman of a sorrowful spirit. I have drunk neither wine nor strong drink, but have poured out my soul before the Lord. Okay, so this is this is chapter 1 of the first book of Samuel, and I read from verse 1 up until verse 15. So I really want to just spend the next I want to spend the next, say, half an hour speaking on this verse 15. And Hannah answered and said, No, my lord, I am a woman of a sorrowful spirit. I have drunk neither wine nor strong drink, but have poured out my soul before the Lord. Now, folks, can I say something to you? I really don't know what I'm going to say here. This caught my interest last week because I was at a church meeting, and the speaker or the elder wanted to do a Bible survey and a scriptural reading survey, and he was talking about the soul and the spirit, and he referred to chapter 2, verse 7. And that amazed me, because there was a time where you didn't hear people touch chapter 2. They kind of skipped over and went over to Adam and Eve. So I thought, wow, that's nice, because that used to be my favorite chapter. So he spoke, and I'm just going to take you over to Genesis 2, verse 7. All right, and it says here that and the Lord God formed man of the dust of the ground, and breathed into his nostrils the breath of life, and man became a living soul. And then he went on to read, it says, and God commanded, so it says, well, I'm going to say this, and the Lord God took the man, put him into the Garden of Eden to dress it and to keep it. And the Lord God commanded the man, saying, Of every tree of the garden thou mayest freely eat, but of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil thou shalt not eat of it, for in the day that thou eatest thereof thou shalt surely die. So the person who was leading the reading, he assumed that because this word came up, that thou shalt surely die, that means the soul. That means when a person dies, their soul dies. Okay, and I know that the Lord has shown me differently. It doesn't resonate with me. And also Jesus has said, and I'd have to find the scriptures, he said only God can kill the soul. And the Lord has shown